I think that Winnipeg, we're growing as a city, and part of that growth is coming from newcomers. I mean, my business is not too far from here, so I have the opportunity to meet a lot of newcomers. And one of the things that we as a city need to do, whatever we can do, is helping connect newcomers with training, employment services, language services, and I know in some of these it's not a direct municipal focus, but we can be a big supporter of that as well. I mean, I think that other than that, we would just look at that policy, and we do see a lot of new people coming into the city, and the reality is that we want them to stay here. And so I've had that kind of conversation with a lot of people too, is that Winnipeg is your first stop. Are you going to stay? Mm-hmm. And why wouldn't you stay? If you decide after a couple of years. And one of the beautiful things I love about this is a lot of people choose to stay once they meet people. Yeah. And so just connecting people to the community. And when I was with Central Neighborhoods, we had a lot of, it was all provincial money, grants, but that was supporting these neighborhood organizations. And maybe that's something the city can look at too, is what kind of support can they give, and sometimes they do in terms of these small grants to help different communities of newcomers build their community, but then also connect with the community at large as well. And so we saw a lot of great events come out of that as well through Central. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's back to Portage Place again. And what a perfect place to have like a welcome center where people can feel like they belong right off the hop when they come, and have access to employment and housing advocacy right from the get-go. I like a lot of things about the plan and the advocacy. I'd also like to see City Council really putting pressure on the provincial government to allow permanent residents to vote. Bumping into a lot of people door knocking that would like to vote, that have lived in Winnipeg for reasonably long period of time, 2, 3, 4 years or more, that aren't able to vote. And we're releasing our entire platform soon, and we'll show where we can have additional resources to support community plans such as the Newcomers policy.
So you'd actually, just to clarify, you'd support, say, like a residency requirement for voting, as opposed to citizenship at the municipal level, like for whatever determined, you've lived for 6 months or a year, whatever that becomes, they would get to a vote prior to getting citizenship.
Once again, we're generating, so yes, I would support it, but we're also generating income using the downtown surface parking lots. This is going to be an interesting battle, but one I'm not willing to give up. And I have been when I was in Parliament, I would lose battles, but I would always end up winning the war.
By creating more jobs and money, right? And that's why I am so focused on making Winnipeg the Canadian leader in growth and investment. $80 million of new tax revenue from Centerport is going to go a really long way to resourcing an awful lot of things, okay? Winnipeg is the most diverse city in the nation. We are the most welcoming city in the nation. Even look at this room. This room just looks like Winnipeg to me, right? And I think that we need to just acknowledge and accept the fact that we're really good at making people feel welcome, and that I know that there are agencies that are involved in newcomer settlement, and I think that that's important work.
Well, part of the job as a mayor, and it's gone out of style, is that a mayor is very, 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 very powerful in this province, particularly about putting demands onto the provincial government and the federal government, especially in an election year, which is what next year is, in areas that they have responsibility for. So when Tom Denton and I and Marty worked together, and we created the refugee insurance program that brought over 18,000 people here, we got the federal government in the first and only so far municipal trilateral agreement with the province was with Becky Barrett, who I love, and with Eleanor Kaplan, two incredibly powerful people I worked with. And we got massive increase in the number of refugees, named and unnamed refugees, that could come to Winnipeg based on the settlement agreement holders' process, which is sort of sometimes called the private refugee sponsorship. And we had housing to back that up. We built cultural centers for communities that were here. And what was most important, they set up the Immigration Refugee Center at the Forks. I think it tripled or quadrupled the number of staff and processing resources we had. And the city put up $250,000 to remove the obligation for sponsoring families, churches, individuals, gurdwaras, mosques, synagogues, community groups, Rotarians, whoever was doing it, and there were a lot of different people doing this. So they wouldn't have to put up $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 per person per family as security with the government. Any money they raised could go to settlement.
The newcomer welcome and inclusion policy is something we've just adopted during my term on council. Now it's about taking the opportunities to implement and strengthen those. I think, again, the relationships between the City of Winnipeg, the Mayor's office, and groups like Immigration Partnership Winnipeg are so critical. One of the opportunities, a few of the opportunities already that are in my platform I think are important is one, to make sure that, as I said, we're working hard to make sure that our labor force at the City of Winnipeg is reflective of the population. I've also talked about the need for 311 operators. We're going to have a language hiring recruitment process where we have more individuals that are reflective of the languages across our city. I've made commitments that our boards and commissions, as mayor, I have the opportunity to make appointments to boards and commissions or make recommendations for appointments to boards and commissions. I want to make sure that there is diversity within our boards and commissions. I've made a commitment also that my own mayoral staff will be more reflective of the City of Winnipeg. And so those are just some of the commitments I've made so far. I've also talked about the fact that right now we don't have enough lifeguards in the City of Winnipeg. And there's challenges in every sector with finding labor. I've made a commitment that we could take a look at the opportunity of recruiting students to positions of lifeguards and offering a tuition subsidy for their schooling in return for them providing 4 to 5 years of service. One of the goals in the recruitment would be to make sure that there's diversity in the recruitment as well. I talked about the fact that making sure newcomer communities know of the student employment opportunities that are coming so that they have greater opportunity to start as summer students and maybe work their way into a career in the City of Winnipeg. And so so I've already made several commitments along that line. I also, as mayor, I'm committed to making sure that I would take a more active role than has been done in the past when it comes to refugees and immigration. Immigration, of course, and refugee work is mostly seen as a federal and, with the provincial nominee program, a provincial program. But it really, has an impact on the City of Winnipeg. And so I want to work very closely with federal and provincial governments to make sure that Winnipeg is welcoming newcomers, is a place for refugees, but then also that those individuals, when their families come and plant roots here, that they're having opportunities and they can settle, plant roots, their children, they can thrive, their children can thrive. So I want to take a very active role working with the senior levels of government.
Yes, I will support it, to be honest with you. But as I've already mentioned to you, one of the areas I'm looking into is our budgeting structure, which I've already mentioned earlier, right? I know that we can still, focus on some important things that, and you mentioned about community, right? Anything that has to do with community, we need it right now. So we need to look at our budget and see how we can support, all this kind of newcomers policy. I've read through that policy and I know we still have a long way to go in order to achieve our goal. And I'll be honest with you, this is just outside the box. As part of my I know that we've been looking at, welcoming city, some other stuff in terms of that. I look at that particular policy. But what I'm trying to say here is this: we need more than that. We need to support, our newcomers as well. It's a bit challenging for some people too when they first come to Canada in terms of housing. in terms of language, right? When you look at refugees, right? When you work with some people, you will know that we find it difficult to even settle down in Winnipeg. So there are a lot of stuff that we need to do to support newcomers. I'm not saying that the policy is not good, but I support it, but we can still improve on that, because I was once like that too, so I know what I'm saying, right? I went through some processes, but what I'm saying is I support that, and I have to look at some kind of funding from our budget and allocate it to this kind of particular, initiative.
I will support it. Again, it's another piece of the puzzle. It's another piece of this fabric that we need to join together. When it comes to funding, we know because I'm actually not a candidate out there making billion-dollar promises at all. I'm not. But what I will say, when it comes to funding newcomers, when it comes to funding Indigenous welcoming centers, which I think is a necessity if we want to start to deal with MMIW issues and being ground zero for MMIW issues, we need to have that space as well, created and funded as well. So for me, it's going to be a reprioritization of budget. I want to do that with council. I want to make sure that we are all on the same page with this vision. But when it comes to a specific line, I'm just reprioritizing. I'm reprioritizing everything, and I know that seems like a really broad answer, but that's just the truth. Budgets are based on priorities. That's just, budget 101. What you fund happens, right?
Yeah, we're good.
Yes, I would. One of the commitments I released in a platform document is the creation of an intercultural policy within city government. And so the narrative of multiculturalism here in Canada is a misnomer, I believe. The difference between intercultural services compared to multicultural services is interculturalism is about understanding how our different perspectives, cultures work together and build relationships between diverse ranges of citizens. And so in intercultural services will address the working in silos that cultural organizations keep on perpetuating.